You're listening to the Vocabbett podcast, where I help students improve their vocabulary for the SAT, ACT, and life itself using my unique and research-backed story-based method. On this podcast, I'm sharing the best tips and tricks for a more enriched vocabulary and pain-free test day. Hello, and welcome to episode number 21 of the Vocabbett podcast. I'm Erica Abbott, a former English and history teacher, the author of the young adult novel Ahead of Her Time, and the founder of the eponymously named vocabulary company, Vocabbett. We are taking a break from the fictional vocabulary boosting stories today because amid all the other news in the world right now, something more academic has been making headlines lately. And that is that the University of California's school system has voted to remove the SAT and ACT from its admissions requirements. Now, as someone who recently founded what is more or less an SAT prep company, I help students improve their vocabulary for the SAT, ACT, and life itself. This is obviously of great interest to me. And whether or not you have any intention of attending a University of California school, I think it should interest you too. The University of California is hugely influential, and it's probably only a matter of time before other schools start to follow suit and drop the SAT as well. And a pretty natural next step in all of this is to breathe a sigh of relief. No SAT means no SAT prep, right? Which means I don't have to learn all those esoteric SAT words, and I can basically just save myself a big headache. Great. It reminds me of one of the last times the SAT was in the news, which was when the College Board, the organization that manages the SAT, made a pretty high-profile announcement that they were removing what they called obscure vocabulary words from the SAT. And the logical response then was similar to what it is now. Great, no obscure vocabulary words means I don't need to go learn a bunch of new SAT words. And what I find frustrating about all of this is that the ostensible stated goal for both of these changes has been to make the SAT, or the college admissions process in general, more fair and less discriminatory. The University of California and the College Board have both talked about how students with tutors and SAT prep courses have an unfair advantage, and they're both trying to rectify that. But in my opinion, these changes have actually caused the most harm to students who they are designed to help. Let's go to the first example about the College Board removing obscure vocabulary words from the SAT. If you do not have a tutor or an expensive course, if you do not have an expert who is there to give you expert advice, it is completely logical to hear that news and stop spending as much time improving your vocabulary. And it's so frustrating because, again, they're trying to help people who don't have tutors and courses and what have you, but anyone with a tutor or a course is not going to fall into that trap. And I want to do the same thing for you right now, by the way. That's why I'm doing all of this. So if you hear, okay, they're taking off obscure words from the SAT, you need to start thinking 2 steps ahead and think, okay, the word obscure means nothing. Who's to say what's obscure? That's completely subjective. And then you dig a little deeper into their announcements and their changes. They overhauled the SAT a couple years ago when they did this. And they say, oh, we're only going to test kids on words they're actually going to need in college and beyond. They actually say college and beyond, which again, that sounds great, right? Oh, only words you're actually going to need. So, I already know everything that I need, right? But let's actually think about that. College is a pretty big place where quite a few different subjects are discussed and quite a few different words are used. And practically by definition, if it's college words kids need, well, then high schoolers really need to be working on their vocabulary. So we should all be drawing the opposite conclusion. People hear this and they think, okay, I'm going to de-emphasize vocabulary from my test prep, when really you either shouldn't be changing its emphasis or possibly even emphasizing it a little bit more. It's just really frustrating because they're trying to make it more fair when really I think it's only the people with the tutors and the courses who are able to wade through their little riddles here. Let's talk now about the University of California's decision and how, in my opinion, the same thing is happening here. The University of California says, no more SAT. We're trying to be more fair. We're getting rid of the SAT. And so people obviously are going to stop preparing for the SAT. But dig a little deeper, and you'll find that the University of California is designing a new test to replace the SAT. And if there is a test, there are going to be right and wrong answers. The University of California might decide to be super avant-garde and amorphic. They might phrase it as, meets expectations instead of right and wrong. But ultimately, if there is a test, they are measuring your ability in some way. And the only way to protect yourself is to educate yourself. It's a shell game, guys. They make these announcements, and I do truly believe that their intentions are good. But the fact of the matter is, they are inadvertently drawing your attention one way when you should be looking the other. You are led to believe that you don't need to prepare or learn certain material, but there's just no getting around it. The smartest, most prepared people will rise to the top on just about any test, whether it's the SAT or something the University of California hasn't written yet. So don't fall for it. Don't lower your standards. I personally believe that everything you learn is valuable, whether it's for a test or not. But even if your sole concern is doing well on one of these tests, the only way to rest easy is to know that you are smart and prepared enough to handle whatever they throw at you. So keep learning. Whether it's for a test or life itself, your education is worth it.